A Story That Inspired Me by Maddox. Schitt's Creek is a sitcom that aired on CBC television from 2015 to April 2020 across 6 seasons. It now airs on Netflix. Here is a synopsis. Schitt's Creek inspired me because of the various ways that each of the characters transformed from the beginning of the show to the end through their relationships with each other, which also developed over time. Before encountering this story, I had never really thought about how much people can grow through hardship and the supportive relationships from other people. The story of the Rose family and the friends they meet in Schitt's Creek produced a lot of different emotions for me. There was lots of humor since this was a comedy, as well as joy and surprise and some anxiety from suspense about how their lives would all turn out. My first example is the relationship between Twyla and the Rose family. And here is a quote by Twyla. "Money can buy a lot of snowmobiles, but it can't buy happiness. So it's about how you live your life. Doing what makes you smile." Twyla is a waitress at Cafe Tropical who becomes friends with Alexis. What we don't know until the end is that Twyla is actually quite wealthy and doesn't want anyone to know because she likes the life that she has. She doesn't want it to be changed or for people to treat her differently. It's kind of ironic that the person who was serving meals to the Rose family at the cafe in Schitt's Creek for the first several years after they lost their money already knew better than they did how to prioritize what was important. Schitt's Creek was where they learned to open their minds to another way of life, the importance of relationships, and how to be their true selves. My second example is about David and Patrick. Here is a quote by Patrick. "I've spent most of my life not knowing what right was supposed to feel like, and then I met you." Through his love for David, Patrick grew as a person because he realized he was gay and he came out to his parents. He also committed his life to David and bought a house in Schitt's Creek for them to live in. And so they could keep running their own store in the town. Now here is a quote by David. "New York is not where you want to be, and I don't want to be anywhere that you don't want to be." David grew as a person over time because despite his family losing all their money, he took charge by getting a job and later starting his own business. This led him to meet Patrick and fall in love. For the first time he was in a long-term relationship. He learned to be less selfish and to consider Patrick's wishes to stay living in Schitt's Creek. He became more mature. Another example is Stevie, who had many relationships with different people on the show. And here is a quote. Stevie said, "I know everything about you, your history, your family, and I'm still here." And then David said in response, "I think you're my best friend." David also found his first real best friend in Stevie, who also did not want him to move to New York. Stevie also grew, becoming more of a professional woman and trying new things. The next example is the relationship between two couples, Moira and Johnny, and Roland and Jocelyn. Here is a quote by Johnny. "You wrote us off, Don. Not a phone call, not an email, not a nickel. Roland and Jocelyn here could not have been more generous with what little they have. And that town you pass through, it's not called Schittsville, it's called Schitt's Creek, and it's where we live." If it weren't for the generosity of the town mayor, Roland Schitt, the Roses would not have had any place to stay when they lost their home and all their money. Over time, the friendship between the couples helps Johnny and Moira Rose to become less stuck up. The friendship changed Roland and Jocelyn as well, because Jocelyn learned to speak up more and Roland became more responsible and ambitious with his career. Even though they come from different lifestyles, they still have a lot in common. For example, both couples love each other and are committed to their families. Johnny stood up for Roland, as shown in the quote, and in a later scene when someone was mocking Johnny, Roland stood up for Johnny. There is true friendship between them because they look out for each other. Schitt's Creek inspired me because of the various ways that each of the characters transformed from the beginning of the show to the end through their relationships with each other, which also developed over time. The show was a mirror because I see myself reflected in how I have become more resilient from hard times in my life, such as learning to cope with things during the pandemic. The show was a window because it made me realize how much people can grow when they have supportive, trusting relationships with people who care about them. The show was a sliding door because it has inspired me to not give up when things are hard and to keep trying. It also inspired me to make more new friends, to be a good friend, and to be there for people that I care about, such as my friends and my family.